Here.
Mack?
Here.
LaCroix?
Here.
Braden?
Here.
That is a quorum. Where's that pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. Could I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I'll move.
Second. Any questions?
You looking to sign up?
Sorry.
Dave
Strack?
had looked on his
Aye.
face that he wanted to sign something.
Mack?
Aye.
Weedman?
Aye.
Braden?
Aye.
LaCroix?
Aye.
Meskel?
Aye. Motion carries. Public comments shortly. Let's see.
Tom, you're looking better.
Yeah. It's a tourniquet to put around my neck. That's
Waiting for him to.
Yeah.
Just he's looking at us like. Come on,
Dramatic
it's
pause.
moving. One more hands on.
So public comment. First we have Justin Albert. I think it is.
Good evening. I just have a few comments and questions about topics that I would like the board to consider exploring and discussing. First, I would like to see more transparency in regards to Science Olympiad fees and what the fees pay for, at least at Frederick. As far as I know, they do not cover any sort of stipend for the parent volunteer coaches. On top of the initial $225 participation fee, participating families paid an additional $20 for their children's t-shirts and more out-of-pocket money for their own transportation to go to the one event we had in Rockford this school year. I also think there needs to be much better communication between the lead coach and all the families. We have repeatedly learned about meetings and events just one day or a few days in advance. If that lead coach needs assistance, I would think our fees that we have paid would help cover such a cost. My next questions and comments have more to do with encouraging conversations about health and wellness in our community. I'll begin with outdoor recess is important. There are many times when I am surprised that students were not allowed outside for recess. And many of us are wondering what is the actual policy in our district and how can we shift the culture to match the policy. It is possible to dress appropriately and play in cold or wet weather. I get that some people don't want their kids to get wet or dirty, but what about the families that don't mind and actually value the numerous benefits an outdoor recess with fresh air gives their child? Recently, it was a 40-degree, relatively warm winter day, and some students had recess taken away from them despite 2 hours of MAP testing. All as a form of punishment because a group of students within the larger group were talking when they weren't supposed to. Recess should absolutely never be taken away as a form of punishment. There are many resources with ideas of what good quality recess time can look like and what outdoor areas that invite creative play can look like. I can provide a list of some of these resources, and I have it with me tonight. Next, I'd like to talk about food allergies. One of my children experienced anaphylaxis last fall during a PTO and school event due to a simple mistake. The school staff and Grays Lake first responders did a wonderful job handling this emergency, and I'm grateful for that. I didn't expect to feel like I'd cry right now, but I'm so glad he's okay. So, as any food allergy parent will tell you though, it's always important to reflect and be proactive, identifying ways to prevent such an emergency from happening again, in order to protect the lives of all food allergic children. Fatality from food allergy reaction is completely preventable. In our schools, are enough PTO volunteers well-versed in food allergies? Do they understand how to read food labels? Do they understand all the potential names for an ingredient like milk? Do they know the anaphylaxis symptoms to watch out for? At a big event, do they know how many kids have food allergies and what those kids may react to? It's a lot more than peanuts and tree nuts. Are volunteers and planners of these events sensitive to the ways to still be inclusive? We all know how much food is wrapped into our culture. If different volunteers at different stations at an event see the symptoms separately, they may not know that for a food allergic child, those symptoms are actually in a continuum of a worsening reaction. My son's progression that day went from redness, saying he was tired, then upset tummy, almost immediately after biting the wrong food, more redness, hives on his face, and then vomit. I will send you links with some documents that offer some suggestions on what PTOs, administrators, and communities in general need to know about food allergies. And I want to add, I'm very grateful for the Food Allergy District Committee. That's been a great outlet and place for food allergy parents to share ideas and talk with Ellen, and so I'm thankful for that. My last questions have to do more with mental and emotional health and tough conversations. How can we foster deep, honest conversations and show more empathy for others? And this question stems from seeing and hearing things after the WGN clip a few weeks ago. Just things on Facebook feeds and conversations in the community. Does our diversity committee have any plans and documents similar to this equity resource guide that I have from another suburb? I'll pass it around. And I will email links to things to all the board members tomorrow. And on a related topic, how does our school district acknowledge and take action in regards to the less obvious subversive bullying that sometimes happens in our school community? Thank you for your time and for listening.
Good evening. You actually brought up a very good point in regards to recess, which is why I'm here tonight. My name is Joe Velez, and I have two students that are at Park Campus School. My daughter's in first grade, and my son's in fifth grade. We've recently found out that there is no recess planned for our fifth grade students at Park School. In talking with other fifth grade parents, we are beyond disappointed to find out that this is not the case for the entire district. We found out that Frederick has daily recess for both their fifth and sixth graders. Furthermore, we found out that this is a school-by-school policy and even a class-by-class policy where certain teachers allow their kids to go out for recess in fifth grade and others do not. And it happens to be that my son is one of those kids that doesn't get to go out for recess. This is particularly troubling considering the fact that when they're in school at this time during the school year, my son's in health class. And so if they're during health class, they have no physical education. So while they're in health class, this time of the year, there's no recess and no PE during the class day. I was told that to reach out to Mr. Malamed from the district, the principal at Park School, and I was informed that there were several reasons why this isn't the case this year. The first one is that there was too many incidents and issues last year with the students in the playground. The second was that there's issues with staff and personnel in regards to union contracts. Third, it doesn't fit in with the schedule with the K through 8 school at Park as it's from a logistical standpoint. And then finally, it's been left up to the teachers to decide when their class goes out as a reward system. I have concerns with each of these explanations that were given to me. Past performance dictating current policy is not acceptable in my opinion. Because there was issues last year doesn't necessarily mean that you should take away the privileges for the kids to go out for recess this year. From a personnel and staffing standpoint, along with it's a K through 8 school, they did it last year. So what happened between the staff and the union contracts last year to this year that we don't have the staff to provide necessary supervision for the kids to go out every day. And then finally, using recess as a reward system, frankly, absolutely disgusts me. I mean, to let the kids know that they should be able to go outside and play with their friends that aren't in their classes, and to be able to reward and take that away from the kids, I don't think that's an appropriate measure for a curriculum for 5th graders. I also have a copy of the email discussion that I had with my son's teacher. She brought up the fact that during this time in the Encore curriculum that they have with science, art, and music, that there are movement breaks throughout the day where the kids go from classroom to classroom. That's structured in single file quiet time during school, during other class time. And I don't think that's appropriate for kids' development socially and physically to be able to go outside and play with their friends and get appropriate exercise throughout the day, especially during this time when our kids are in health class that don't have PE. I mean, these kids are coming home and they're bottled up with tons of energy, and some of that needs to be released throughout the school day to help them function and learn in a proper environment. Finally, as we all know, it's been approved that the students received Chromebooks, and they'll be able to use that through 8th grade in our district. And although I think it's appropriate for the kids to be able to learn technology and have that screen time available as a learning tool, we also have to understand that there's a healthy balance with that. And as such, the kids being able to get off of those screens and being able to go outside and play outside with their friends, even in other classes, I think is something that should be taken into consideration from a district level. Especially during the time when our 5th graders have health class and don't have physical education throughout the day. And I guess my question to the board is it standard policy for Frederick and Park, that are the 2 5th grade schools in the district, to have separate policies in regards to recess? I've talked to and discussed with other 5th grade parents who are teachers and educators in other K through 5 schools in the surrounding area, and have told me that when you have a policy for one school, it should relate to the rest of the district at that same age level. And I feel like we're in conflict here, given the fact that Frederick and their 5th and 6th grade programs, 5th and 6th grade classes are able to go out for recess every single day, where Park students, because it's a K through 8 and it's a logistical issue with the school, is not being considered. So that's an issue that I have, and I wanted to bring to the board's attention and ask if there's any ideas, thoughts, or inputs of what we can do to bring recess back into the core curriculum for the students, for the 5th grade students at Park School. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. I guess we should have a couple presentations. First is for the solar project, I believe.
So really quickly, I'm just going to take a moment to introduce them. We have Kurt Hintz with Performance Services and Cole Haley. Kurt is our
business development.
There we go. And Cole has been our project manager on the project.
Thank you, John. Dr. Carroll and fellow members of the board, thank you very much for having us. Again, it's nice to see everybody. Again, Kurt Hintz with Performance Services. It's been a while since I've stood up here to present. I believe we were was a little over a year ago probably when we were finalizing this, this deal, and now we are moments away from finishing it. So what we were asked to do is, and Cole again is our PM on the job, so he's got the most actual knowledge of the day-to-day. But we wanted to come in and just give you a kind of rundown of where we're at to date, where the rebate money is, where the SREC money is, what we've done with need, kind of show you some things that the system has done, and then give you an update on where we are finishing up here at middle school. So in no particular order, let's start with some of the main things. This has been a very successful project for Performance Services, and what we've heard so far is for Grays Lake 46 as well. You have been producing solar at 3 locations. You have been energized 4 months now. And so there's a separate meter that was put in that's keeping track of everything you've produced up to this point. And with those will come the credits that we talked about originally with the SRECs. Recently, John has finished filing the paperwork necessary to secure those SRECs. And so within the next quarter, we should start to see some checks, because the way the SRECs work is you don't have to have all the systems in place and energized to receive. And they will backdate to the minute it was energized. So each location, we obviously finished Frederick and Park and Prairie View ahead of middle school, and this one will follow up. Other things to note, we have had, to say the least, we've had some weather issues. The polar vortex, which we're going to bring up here in a second when Cole, or actually, let's bring up the polar vortex quick.
What date was that?
So that was last Wednesday. And
let's see where we at.
funny thing about the polar vortex, if everyone remembers, it was a week ago, right, when it was minus 55?
January 30th, I think.
30.
Was that the 30th? Okay, sorry.
Yep.
The 29th and 30th. So we were experiencing negative 55-degree weather, but your solar array was still producing some solar because the sun was out. So even though it was, you know, catastrophically cold and dangerous to be outside, we were still able to produce some.
There.
Not a lot,
30th? No.
not a lot, but
No,
we were
that's
producing.
But we had snow.
The point
We
that,
had snow there.
yes,
Yep.
the point behind it was that the system has been working and is working to our liking to this point. Middle school, obviously, we are a few weeks away as soon as the weather breaks. We kind of had to make a decision a week and a half ago that it was not worth the risk of having people up on the roof, trying to move snow off the roof, any potential damage that would be done to the roof just by having people up there in this type of weather and conditions. So we've pulled the contractors for what we hope is only another week or so. Obviously, every time we get a major snow like we have, that puts a little damper in our plan. But I can tell you from the contractor standpoint, and definitely our standpoint, most of all Cole's standpoint, we are excited to finish that project up and then get that energized as well so that you can start receiving credit for that one. One of the things that we're going to go into in a minute is the solar edge. We've put in a very robust inverter. It allows us the ability to look at a 2-panel level. So not only do we have thousands of panels in the district, we can zoom into 2 individual panels and see exactly what it's doing at any moment. And in a few minutes, Cole will show you what the system's doing right now, and then we'll pick some better days from the past so you get a better understanding. We have had a situation where we had need, the national organization that does solar kits and teams up with the district. They were in about 3 weeks ago, roughly, and they met with some students and staff and went through kind of that project. The kits are coming, and unfortunately there was a little snafu on our end. We were not, Cole and I were not made aware the day they were coming, so neither of us were here, unfortunately. But we did hear that it was a successful day. I don't know if
I was there.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to say anything or not, but the point, we've heard it was very successful and anticipating the solar kits coming in and actually starting to do some real projects. I also,
It was January 29th, right in between all of the bad weather days.
Yes.
We were very happy to get it in. And we know the trainer actually had it be sent home after that because it was right when the bad weather hit. But
Right.
she was happy to get us in.
Good.
And Tom was there for I think, the majority of the day with us.
Yeah. So we are anticipating obviously nicer weather in the spring and summer, and then being able to do some creative things with the systems outside as well. So, and that's an organization that we will continue to work with. They've shown us, besides letting us know, which we told them, we've had a lot of success with other districts as well. And the solar kits are going to be pretty neat. The kids are really going to enjoy putting those together. So that'll be something that when they're done, we should be able to report back to the board how that went. I have a couple things I'll leave you with, but we thought we'd get into, first off, questions at any point, but also I want Cole to kind of go through a couple things and let you see what capabilities we have, but also you will have. There's going to be some training for John and Keith once we're all done and energized. But at this point right now, we're able to look at some really cool things on what the system is doing on really almost a second-by-second basis.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And the board, I'll get you all the information so you can go in on your own and watch this too, so.
absolutely.
So let's start off with the dashboard here. I'm gonna go home first. So every time you log in, you'll be taken to this home page that lists off each and every one of your sites. So here you have all of your sites listed off: Park, Frederick, Prairie View, and Grays Lake Middle School. Grays Lake Middle School is not connected currently, hopefully in the near future, but we will check out Prairie View School. So here you kind of get a quick overview of what's kind of going on with your whole system. Peak power, so that's the power that it would create at the highest point. You know, summertime, you'll see those. I mean, we got real close at Prairie View the other day, even with that sunnier day when it was nice and warm outside. So we're real close to that. Shouldn't take much more to achieve that in a little bit warmer temperatures. So then here you kind of see, and you can be able to change this, what you created yesterday, today's energy was produced today, and then the whole month as well. So.
While you're flipping through there, I want to, we've had projects that have finished a year, and we've done the savings reports and presented those. Very typical for what we anticipated and what I believe we talked about at some point in one of the meetings was that we would be in that 90 to 95% of production for the first year. You have to look at solar for the whole year. Most of these projects for you weren't energized until basically the end of the summer. So your real heavy load of what's going to come is still to come. Your year isn't really a calendar year. It's once they were energized. So the high production months are well on their way. Anticipating an early spring and a nice spring, we should really make up the difference quickly. But what we've seen is that even with some historic weather outside of our even normal parameters, the systems are producing anywhere from 90 to 95% of what we want. With the next grouping, so the next year after everything's been tweaked, that they're really going over that 100%, which is really what we want, to be over 100%. But again, as everyone knows, with electrical equipment and different tweaks of the system, we're constantly monitoring it, and so we will be doing the same thing here.
Yep.
Yeah.
With this energy output, can you provide some context on the unit of measure? So, I don't know, way to make it real for us, like what would this building use per day? I'm trying to get my mind around, is that a little, is that a lot?
So for example, and I don't have don't have the current sheets for these, but I do have one for Meadowview. And we know your current production or consumption at Meadowview is about 430,000 kW. That system is, that building is very similar size to Park, right? Yeah. So if you think of it in terms of what we're able to produce at Park. Now, we're able to get a little bit more on the roof at Park. Are you showing Park right now?
No, I'm showing Prairie View.
Okay.
So 430,000 kW per year?
That's the consumption.
Per
year.
Per year.
Per year, yep. And so with that, we're offsetting at Park, I believe. If I recall, I did say, if I recall, it was about.
I'm trying to remember. That's Prairie View still.
Here, go to Park real quick.
Yeah, I am.
We're gonna bring it up. I'll tell you exactly what we're gonna do. It'll make sense.
So Parks are here. Peak.
Yep. So the Meadowview system size is about 100 kW smaller to do about 100% of that building. And so this obviously Park is a little bit bigger. But we were bringing the entire district, I believe, about 87% off for those 4 buildings. And I believe Park was around 90% of its production. Now, I wish I had that with me. I probably have it in my car, actually. But if not, I will get this information to Keith, John, and Ellen right away and pass it off to you. But to answer your question, we are almost able to run the entire building on the solar that we're able to produce. So our goal for the 4 buildings was to take you off about 85, 86, 87% of your utility bill would be used for something else. You still are always going to have a ComEd bill. You still have ComEd service, and you still have instantaneous, whether you're producing solar or not. But it was going to reduce how much you have to spend with ComEd. That was one of the reasons behind it.
Yeah, I remember in the discussions we've had with you, wasn't there going to be times when we would actually be putting power on the grid?
You will in the summer.
In the summer when there's not as much usage?
Exactly.
Okay.
So Illinois, if everyone recalls, has adopted net metering. And net metering allows for when your consumption is less, which it is in the summer, but you're producing the most, the meter will spin backwards. It's fall, spring, winter, when you need it, it catches back up. That's why when we talk about solar, we have to look at it for the full year. Because what you did is start basically at the end of the high point, and you're going through the lowest point, which is the winter, and then you're going to come back up into the spring. But by summer, you'll have made up you'll make up the entire difference. And so overall, yes, our goal was to really take that building off completely. Yes, sir.
As far as installations you've done, how troublesome or not troublesome has our installation been compared to all the ones you've done?
That's a great question, and I do not want to step on anyone's toes. We had a very seamless installation at Frederick, and a very seamless installation at Prairie View, and I would say a very seamless installation at Park. We've had a very, 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 very difficult installation at the middle school. And the main reason is once we got done with the flat roof area, it's a slope shingled roof. And with the architectural shingle that we put in and having to do a lot of the mechanical attachments, it's been a longer process. It's been a more detailed process. The process has worked. The installation group has done very well. Cole has done an amazing job overseeing it. You can answer probably even more. Have you seen, major? We did not have a lot of hang-ups in any of the other projects. Our biggest, our biggest hang-ups is making sure that the ComEd and Constellation and SRECs are all put through right. But we can do, actually, let me say it this way. We know how to do shingled roof installations now. And if this is, and probably most likely the hardest, because we had to reinforce the building as well, because it was wood structure. If we can do that, then we can do anything. That's what our group believes. But I would say overall, this has been on par with our other installations. We've actually had probably even a little more difficult in some other areas, just time restraints. Our biggest issue here is just the fact that it's a slope roof and the weather. If we didn't have the weather, and if Cole was joking with Keith earlier, if we would have lost a week or two in November, we might have been done. But the snow came early for us, so.
Recently, when I've been talking with Keith, and we've had some, there's minor repairs here and there with the roof. So I came and checked everything, and we didn't have any leaks across the whole roof for solar-specific stuff. I came and looked everywhere where there's a leak or a question of one. We've looked. I've checked as we've installed. We've had numerous rains, snow melting, that sort of a thing, and I've checked numerous times with it, and haven't had any problems with any leaking anywhere across any of the roofs.
A term used in a past life when we had installed science equipment, that sort of thing in another school. They had a point where we called it a turnkey date, or roughly, where everything, as I understand it, is turned over to the school.
Mm-hmm.
Roughly, what is your date that you think is the date for that?
It's still weather related.
Mm-hmm.
We have about a week and a half of actual work
here
left. Just have to get it done, and we want to make sure it's safe. So from that point, then we have to get the final interconnection. And so that's on ComEd. What we've seen, we've applied, we're in the queue. How fast ComEd wants to move, we don't know. If I had to guess, I would say probably April, sometime in April. But I'm still guessing. It would be great if we got a weather break next week and we could finish up in a week and a half or a week, and we'd be done in March. That'd be great. But
you may not know this since you don't live here, I don't believe, but a very important thing is there's a sign on the Dog and Suds saying that it opens on Friday. That probably make a big difference in your time.
Well, absolutely. I've driven by that many times. So I also will point out that the roofing contractor that the district has used in the past and has been great to work with and have done a great job for us as well. We're very happy with them. And they've really done what we've asked of them, which is what we would hope, but typically, when you're hiring someone you don't know, you get what you get, but we really are very happy with their work. So do you want to go into just pick a couple
Yep.
days? So
I'll just give an overall view of the system and then
yeah. So today was a gloomy day. Why don't you start with today? So today was a gloomy day, cloudy the whole day, but the system was still producing. It produces at night. It produces at basically at any point when there's light. You're not going to get a lot at night. You're not going to get a lot on days when there's heavy snow, but it will produce. And so
that's today.
This is today's.
This is Park.
Park. So at its peak, it hit about 12.5 kW. Not a lot.
Over at Park, we've had some drifting issues that with the different levels everywhere. So we've had some hiccups in that. Just trying to figure that out and get around that. Just double checking things here and there with it for the most part. So
at Prairie View in October, I think it hit somewhere in milliwatts.
Yeah. So it, let me bring it up here.
Or megawatts, I mean.
I think for October, if I remember correctly, the consumption for the building, like 2016, was 68 or so, and we hit like 58. So we were real close. Just a couple little minor hiccups here and there, just trying to double check everything. This was today. Yeah, so we had monthly.
Once the system is fully energized, and when we have access to everything, you will be getting a report as well. And then every year, we'll sit down with the district and go through what the numbers are and show you what you've produced and what you've overproduced and how much you've earned in SREX, and I know you're keeping track of it as well, but it's just part of our ongoing commissioning and performance assurance.
So this view shows you basically a month-by-month bill, energy production. So one of the biggest things to be concerned about is more so the whole month. And you're going to get a good day, a bad day, that sort of a thing, especially this time of year. But considering the weather we've had, we've produced a good amount of energy. I mean, especially the last couple of days. You know, last week we were almost at the peak for the system at certain times during the day. I'll drop into that real quick. Yeah, because our peak's 6:33 and you're at 5:31. So I mean, we were real close considering the weather that we've had. I know we had a little bit of snow on there. It's just a couple minor little electrical things to touch up on, but.
Yeah, and when Cole was saying we were close to the peak was already adjusted in terms of the time of day, time of year. We've already put into account that there would be soiling and there would be shading and there would be cloud cover. So there's a good chance that 531 well exceeded what we actually anticipated and when we modeled this. And one of the first things I said to the district is we are a conservative engineering company by nature to start. And so our hope and our plan was to exceed the numbers that we showed you. And so we made some assumptions right away that would kind of keep us in line with any of this potential weather that we might get. And that all went into the original design of the system. Yeah.
So I'll show the layout. Every single school you can do this. You can actually see this on your phone too if you have access. You can go in at any time and see the full dashboard and layout. So you'll be able to drill down. This is where you can drill down per panel, per inverter, what's being produced. Now this is at the time that when it was last producing. Zoom in so I can see these actual numbers. Yeah. I'm just trying to get into there. So one of the big advantages first that of using the system, normally with the inverters, different companies and that sort of stuff, it's all controlled by per string. So you'll get anywhere, you know, our strings have about 40 panels per string on them, 3 strings per inverter. So for this one, we still have those strings in there, but this is narrowed down to just an optimizer per 2 panels. So if you have an issue either with one panel or the other, it's just that panel and not the whole string. If the other systems that are out there, you lose a panel in that string, that whole string is down.
Like Christmas lights.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Christmas lights. And we do that as well for not only the Christmas light effect, but also the system. We want the system still producing even though a couple panels might be down. And because we can diagnose all the way to a 2-panel level, we can change it out, we can get it fixed, we can call the right people, have the inverter company come back, whatever it might be, much quicker. And so the system will still produce and you're only losing a very small amount versus we actually had panels that we got from a insurance claim out east where they had one inverter for the entire 10,000 panels. And they had a catastrophic weather, lost about 20% of the panels, and had to insurance claim the entire amount and start over. So
who monitors this?
So we are monitoring as well, but you will have access as well, and there can be alerts set up so that if something changes outside the parameters that are set, you can kind of see what's going on. Now, we always want to hesitate to tell everyone that if you set an alarm every time a cloud goes by, you're going to
get alarmed.
It really, we want to set it for alarms where if there's failure or real problems, and then we can diagnose what that issue is.
So should that be looked at daily?
Well, and that's where you could, but again, it might drive you a little crazy because the system, you may think it's not doing what you think it should be. Looking outside, it's sunny, and why isn't this system? And sometimes it literally just could be the system is slow, the system, the communication is different. It doesn't mean that the system isn't producing. But, you know, looking at it every day, couple days, you know, I guess what I'm trying to say is unless you have a lot of time on your hands and you want it to be like a live feed on a ticker tape, it might be too much. You might want to just check periodically to see how the system is doing. And Keith will have access to that, and whoever else wants that. And then, you know, we've talked about tying it into, you know, the monitors or something in the school where, or keeping it on the website where there could be a little, hey, click on it and just see what the system is doing at this moment. Those are things that this allows you to do. So this is Prairie View. Again, if he clicked on Frederick, you would see the system side. I mean, just go to one other school quick. Just to kind of see. It's the same for each, obviously. And as soon as we're done with middle school here, that'll be up there as well. Middle school again is the largest array of the four to date, and we are excited to have that one put in production.
I'll look at the month. So it's very interesting across the four schools, the difference in the melting patterns of the panels. I've been talking about with Keith with this. It's just with the wind and the rain. I mean, you go out and walk through Prairie View right now and you have 2 foot of snow in front of it because it's melted off and it's all piled up. And so there is you don't think there's a big difference between, you know, the little couple miles that it's apart, but it makes a big difference in there. So you know, when you compare them site to site, you kind of got to look at what's really going on, what's the wind difference there, because that'll help slow down or heat up the panels a little bit better for it. So the panels will melt off overall. It just depends on when that snow occurs. If they've been producing all day, it was sunny, and then the snow starts at 3, 4, 5 o'clock, that snow will start melting off. Now, if it comes at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, that snow is going to stand there a little bit. Now, even with that snow on there, it's still producing. You know, you see an inch or two on that panel, you're still going to see some additional power being produced there. So,
right. And that's where the big differences has been, even when I say historic weather. Last January and February, now the system wasn't in place yet. Those 2 months were outside the parameters of 50 or 60 years of historic weather. The last few weeks where we've had the heavy snow at the middle of the night when it's freezing, it takes longer for those to kind of self-clean themselves. But overall, we know that the system is doing what it should be. So, any other questions with this? I don't want to take up too much time. I mean, we could get into a lot of stuff, but you're going to have access, and as much access as you want. We just figured it makes the most sense to do it once we have all 4 sites set up for you. Couple last things to leave you with. So one of the things that we have discovered on your behalf, and I've let the district know, is a rebate from putting in this smart inverter. So ComEd is incentivizing districts, people, businesses to do solar. The last report is in the next 5 years, they have to come up with over 1,700 megawatts of solar, and that's just to catch up to get into that renewable portfolio standard, which is over 2,300 megawatts by 2025. So we haven't even scratched the surface in Illinois where we're at with solar. And so ComEd and Ameren have put together some really aggressive rebate programs and different things, which we didn't even know about when we first presented solar. And when we did the workbooks and we put all the financials together, we had no idea that these existed. One of the things that we are always constantly doing is looking for every dollar that's available. So I'm happy to announce to you that just shy of $600,000 check will be coming to the district sometime later this year. I don't know exactly when, and I know that's not a really good answer, but we can't apply for the final amount until middle school is finished up. But basically, ComEd is offering $250 per kilowatt. You're about a 2.4 megawatt system, so simple math is about $600,000 to the district. I bring that up now because we've also talked about some future opportunities, one of which would be Meadowview. Alan and John and Keith asked me to put together another workbook and design for Meadowview and see how the numbers shook out. Happy to report they do look as promising as the other buildings did. We've included some information with them as well for redoing the roof, which needs to be done before we could do solar. But it was funny that you asked how the installation has gone, because we are, we would have probably passed 6 months ago from doing any shingled roofs or any slanted roofs or anything like that. But we got a lot of, yeah, we're ready to go and we want to go, and we're glad we did, because what we've learned from that and how well this installation, even with the issues that we've had, have gone, we're ready to tackle another one, with obviously Meadowview being, you know, a shingled roof as well. Our roof numbers were really good. We have a solid budget with that, and solar looks like about a $1.2 million rough number at this moment. Installation, if something for the board to consider, not right now, but obviously in the future. But thought I would mention that after I mentioned the $600,000 check that's coming.
Any more questions for them?
Well, again, thank you so much for having us. Thank you for the opportunity, and we're happy to be a good partner with you.
Thank you.
Yes, no crutch. Hopefully my physical therapist and my doctor are not watching. All right, so as Joe fixes that, Ellen asked me to present to you a couple things that we're updating in human resources. As you know, dabble in it from time to time for the district. But we want to move forward with a couple of projects to hopefully streamline our onboarding process, make sure we're finding the best recruits, because as we know, the single most important thing when improving student performance, it's going to happen because of quality teachers. So to help us in that, we have a couple of challenges that we face as administrators in our current system. We use a system called AppleTrack, and that is where candidates go online and they apply for our positions that we have open. It's actually, sorry, the old name is AppleTrack. The current name, which was changed this year, is Applicant Tracking. So we are constantly interviewing. Some of our issues that we currently are facing is that from time to time we are constantly interviewing the same candidates across buildings because we don't have a system in place. The system that we're using does not allow us to see who's interviewing what. So come August and it's crunch time, we're all rushing around. A great example is that during central registration this year, a bunch of administrators were sitting in eating lunch, and one administrator says, I need an assistant. Chris, who have you interviewed on this list? Mr. Murray, who have you interviewed on this list? So we're actually having to sit and bounce back and forth instead of being able to go into the system and just say, okay, this person was interviewed, this person was interviewed, and put notes into the system and say, these are candidates that are worth bringing back in, or maybe this is somebody that would be better suited at a different position. So this is where we're really struggling. And then also the amount of time that we're spending on screening applicants has, you know, talking to some of our principals, we all have different procedures when we're screening. One building, they do a marathon session, and so they'll bring in 15 candidates in a day and just do 15-minute screening interviews. I, on the other hand, screen online look at the applications, and then make phone calls, and we do an Human X. It's a program that I was trained in years ago, but that can last, it's an hour-long screening interview over the phone. It's a little bit more in depth, but we'd like to try and streamline some of that. So as I said, applicant tracking is a system that we use, formerly AppleTrack. So when I refer back to AppleTrack, I apologize for not using the most up-to-date language, but that's what we've been using. That's what it was named for years. It's a web-based system. It is the most popular in Illinois and is virtually used by all school districts in Illinois because it was created by an administrator in Illinois, up in the suburbs. So everybody knows it. It allows districts to post positions on their website and also on a national website. So they own a website called K-12 JobSpot. So if you're looking anywhere in the U.S. that is part of this system, you can go on there, and I can type in teacher, put in zip code of 60030, and that will bring us in. I can set parameters. I want 5 miles, 10 miles, 15 miles out of that. So that's kind of an overview of applicant tracking. How we utilize it here in CCSD46, we are part of the Lake County ROE Consortium. We do not have our standalone. Many districts our size have a standalone system, so we house all of our information for ourselves. We're part of the consortium for the Lake County region. We are involved with 15 other school districts. We are one of the largest in that consortium. About half of those school districts are special education day schools or charter schools, so or very small one-school districts. So they're not hiring at the pace that we're having to hire. So that leads me to part of our issue. The benefits of being in the ROE consortium is it's more cost effective. Of course, the more people in it, the less expensive it is. Some of the limitations, though, that we're facing is that when a candidate goes on and applies through the ROE consortium, they can see third grade teacher at Avon Center School. They'll go in and apply. Not only but they're going to apply for our position, but anybody else that has an elementary position, that they're going to get a hit on that. So we could have a candidate that's applying to Big Hollow School, but their application would be routed to me as a principal at Avon. So we may be making phone calls. Oftentimes we'll see people with letters of reference that says, or not letters of reference, intro letters that say, "Dear Principal Whipple," and it's a principal in Big Hollow that I know. So I know right away that this individual is not looking for a job in our district. So if I see this candidate and I want to say, hey, this looks good on paper, I want to talk to this person, I'll have to cold call that person and say, hey, this is who I am, come on, I'd like to talk to you. It's an awkward experience to cold call somebody for a job that doesn't know that they're applying in your district. We're also unable to use it to its full advantage, the full potential. We're unable to leave notes in it, and we're unable to view interview history, and we're unable to produce forms to help in our workflow, hiring workflow. The importance of leaving notes and viewing interview history is that in a full standalone system, and I was talking with Dr. Glickman prior to the meeting, is that when she goes in and opens up her system, she's very familiar with this, she'll see this principal opened on this day, this principal opened on this day. Paul, you've used it as well. So you know exactly who's looked at that interview, and then we can also make notes. So I would be able to put interviewed, worth talking to again, or I could forward it on. Right now, we're unable to do that. I pulled up somebody you may know, their profile, and there are some notes in it. Those notes say hired, and I can't read the dates, but also says note hired to begin on a certain date. Now, those notes are accessible to everybody in the consortium. So while we are able to use the notes, anytime we put something in there, anybody can see it. So if we put interviewed on this day, maybe we shouldn't. You want to put something to notify us that this isn't the candidate we really want to talk to or we plan on moving ahead with. Anybody can see that. Now that's an issue for privacy issue. You know, it's a privacy issue. We don't want to influence any other administrators and any other districts. We want to be able to talk amongst ourselves. One of our solution would be to improve our national exposure and to improve our effectiveness of our application process would be moving to a standalone process or a standalone system outside of the consortium. I have the annual price increase there for you to preview. While this is not above the $10,000 threshold that would be required for board action, we wanted to let you know about this. And since it is a price increase, it would raise our cost, double our cost, or raise it $2,500, depending on semantics that John and I go back and forth on. He says it doubled, and I say just raise it $2,500. One of the other things that I didn't put up on here is that we are bound by what the settings are at the ROE. So for years, I'd been going back and forth trying to figure out why we couldn't see ourselves on the national website, the K-12 job spot. Somebody at the ROE turned that off without notifying anybody. So in order to get our name out there, people had to want to come to Lake County. They had to go on that ROE site. Our jobs were not being broadcast out to the the entire nation. So anybody that might be at U of I, ISU, Northern, some of the in-state or out-of-state colleges that want to apply, maybe somebody lives in DeKalb, but they're looking for jobs anywhere in Northern Illinois. They weren't seeing our positions unless they actually wanted to go into Lake County. So that's kind of another restriction. Another thing that we're looking at doing, actually we've moved forward with, is RIVS. RIVS is a video interviewing tool that allows every candidate that applies for a position in our district to receive a one-way interview. It's a video interview that they'd be going through. This is going to help us be able to interview a tremendous amount of applicants as soon as they apply. And this system can integrate with applicant tracking. So what would happen is as soon as somebody hits submit on their application, they would receive an email from RIVS that would prompt them, hello, welcome to our district. We create our welcome. Welcome to our district. Thank you for applying. We have a 5-question interview that we would like you to videotape yourself doing. We would be able to create all the requisitions for the different positions that we're having based on our values. So engagement with students, relationships with teams, and engagement structures. So I have a quick little video, and I forgot to tell Joe I have a video, so I don't have speakers, so I'll hold this. I'll turn it up as loud as possible. That kind of explains RIVS. We did set it up already and went through a training, so I sent an interview to all the principals to create a video resume. None of them have done it yet.
Our organization and has recently been tasked to hire a new sales representative. Let's watch as Lindsay uses RIVS digital interviews to interview and hire a top new addition to the sales team. Lindsay logs onto RIVS and creates a new workflow called Sales Rep Workflow, where she can set up which steps she would like candidates to go through in the interviewing process. She chooses to first screen candidates through one-way interviews that includes 1 written interview question and 2 video interview questions. Lindsay chooses a live video interview as a second step for candidates who are chosen from the one-way interview. The final step of the process is an in-person interview at her office. Lindsay is a busy recruiter and needs to optimize her availability, so she creates a video interview schedule where she marks times in her calendar that candidates can choose from to schedule their video interviews. Lindsay has now finished setting up her workflow. Rivs is integrated with Lindsay's applicant tracking system, so when candidates apply to the sales rep position online, they are automatically added to the sales rep workflow and receive an email invitation to complete the one-way interview. Lindsay has a few moments before her afternoon meeting, so she decides to quickly screen a couple of candidates. She comes across Emily, who, based on her responses, seems like a promising candidate. Lindsay ranks and comments on Emily's responses. The rankings and comments are helpful if Lindsay chooses to compare Emily's scores with other candidates, as well as refer back to Emily's profile at a later time. She thinks Emily could be a good fit, so Lindsay adds Emily to the next stage of her workflow, selecting a time to conduct the live video interview. Later that night, Lindsay receives an email that Emily selected an available time slot for the video interview the following day at 11 a.m. At 11 a.m. the next day, Lindsay clicks the link from the email and is brought directly to the interviewing session. Because Lindsay screened Emily with prerequisite questions in the one-way digital interview, she's able to ask Emily deeper questions during the live video interview to get a better understanding of Emily's personality, attitude, and whether or not Emily would fit culturally with the organization. When the video interview is over, Lindsay shares Emily's profile with her coworker John to get his perspective on whether or not Emily would be right fit for the role. John sent Lindsay back positive reviews of Emily, so Lindsay invites Emily in for an in-person interview. When Emily came in for the in-person interview, the information that Lindsay gathered during the digital interviews was validated that Emily would make a great addition to the company, and she was hired as a new sales representative.
So that shows all the parts of the system. We're a small corporation, or small school district, not that big. So we wouldn't necessarily need to go through all of those steps. We would definitely be using that initial screener to make sure that we find people that align with our district's mission and vision. And then we can pass back and forth. Hey, you know, I could talk to special ed. Here's a candidate that, you should definitely take a look at. The benefits of RIVS is that every candidate is going to get an interview. So doesn't matter who it is. We have 50 people apply for a position. We've already conducted 50 interviews. Now, how does this benefit us? Where's our time savings? Remember that situation that I told you about earlier where you spend an entire day interviewing 15, 20 candidates that come through? Now I'm going on vacation. I used one of our principals who has a vacation home up north with her family. Now she can be on her way up north for a long weekend. She can screen candidates right there, email them on the way, and then come Tuesday when she comes back from a long weekend, or Monday when they come back from a long weekend, she could have interviews already set up with 5 candidates that she wants to move forward with. So instead of having to do the marathons, we're able to narrow it down very quickly and share amongst each other. So as it just recaps everything that I kind of mentioned, with this exception of second round interviews, can be done virtually anywhere through their two-way interview system. Oftentimes, we've found candidates who are moving up here. We've had a lot of candidates whose spouses were going to be working at the naval base. Most often that I've interviewed twice this past summer, The wife was a teacher, and so she wanted to look for jobs. And so we tried the Google Hangouts. Not everybody's proficient with Google. We've tried FaceTime, but then people are sitting there with their phones. This would allow, all we have to do is send somebody a link. It's kind of like a GoToMeeting if you're in the business world and you're using that. So this would be able to do a two-way or a one-way. Also, we would be able to use the system for inter-rater reliability. So we could take 5 or 10 candidates, have every administrator watch candidate 1, 2, 3 through 10, and then we can all rank them on our own. And then we can see where we match up and some of the differences we might have. This is important as we move forward as a district, the one district, one direction. We want to make sure that we're all looking for the same qualities in a candidate. So this would help us in our training for that. This annual cost is $7,000. It's a monthly basis. We've gone ahead and moved forward with this. We're going to be using it starting over the next 2 weeks at our job fairs that are coming up. We're attending a couple career fairs at the universities. How we're going to use this is that I've created a Google form, so for candidates to fill out their name, their phone number, their email, their certification area. After that, we're going to import all their emails to the system so that they can create a digital resume. So we don't have positions posted, we're just going to collect a resume, digital resume, so that they can tape a little bit about themselves, telling us about their current experience, their student teaching experience. So now we already have a bank of applicants as we move forward into March, April, the busy hiring season. So, any questions?
So you're using it for all candidates for the screening interview?
Correct, just that first initial screener.
And some candidates for the second interview based on that they can...
Geographic location, yeah.
How many people in a typical year would we hire, say between March 1st and knowing there's a retirement and say September 1st?
Over 30.
30, okay.
In the past 3 years that I've been doing this.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, over 30 every year.
And where do we go to job fairs?
Illinois State University, Northern Illinois University, U of I and EIU have a joint fair. This year it's going to be at EIU, but the students calm down for that one. There's another joint job fair. It's UIC, Loyola, and DePaul. That'll be next week. And then the IIRC Diversity Fair. It's on Saturday in the middle of March.
Suppose you run into a situation where there's 2 or even 3 principals in the district that are interested in the same person. Is that pretty much whoever calls first?
We arm wrestle.
Good. I've had many battles with the district office on things like that. You need to slow down. No, I'm not going to slow down.
I've actually lost to Laura before.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So as part of One District, One Direction, it sounds like we don't have a consistent process across schools right now?
We're working towards it.
Okay. I can see where this can help that, but without the process, it still probably doesn't get you the ultimate workflow.
Yes, this helps us. This is one of our steps.
Yeah. And I would, I love arm wrestling, but I would also say that, we start thinking about our talent versus my talent and saying what's best for the district, what placement is best for the district.
It's a big mind shift.
Is a big shift, but ultimately the best for the district.
A big thing happened back in 2011, and I could go down this road because it's my dissertation. But sequence of dismissal, so RIFs, reduction in forces, changed from seniority to performance, and then seniority. So now that looked across the district, not just within buildings. So that's where we really started to have that shift in mentality that it is a district, we are district employees, we are not teachers at one school or another. Other questions? Tom?
Don't go too far on that one. There is a situation where somebody would be a fit in the district in a certain school with a certain group of teachers in 1 year, and 3 years later they would not be, depending on how the group changed. Don't forget that. There's individuals. It isn't all Lincoln Logs where they all go like this. They don't. At least the last 5% is that.
I guess I would just add too, is we're, from diversity committee perspective, as well as just, the right thing to do, looking at how do we create environments where kids see teachers who look like them. I appreciate you're going to the diversity fair, but would love to hear, even not necessarily tonight, but at some point, inside or outside the system, how do we,
how can we do that?
And I know it's not
that's
easy.
That's a challenge.
I totally get that.
That was recently a challenge on one of our HR Twitter chats in the state national. I think that was the national conversation, is how do we do that? And we're not the only one facing that situation. Also, another, the UIC DePaul and Loyola fair definitely is a more diverse candidate pool. So that's one of the reasons we've picked that one up.
And can you take some people with you on the team to present?
Yes, we have
diverse face.
We have multiple administrators that are going. Stephanie will be joining me for the IIRC and the DePaul fair as well.
The most important thing you do. If you got the wrong textbook, we can take care of that. And I'm not even saying a failing teacher. I'm just saying a teacher that's not as good as they could be. We pay that price.
Thank you. Next we have board reports, if anyone has anything they want to share.
Well, we had over the weekend, realizing that we had some bad weather and some changes in the way Science Olympiad's running this year. Some parents and some teachers put together, I think, a useful workshop. And, your wife was there, et cetera. And that was, we needed that. It was good to see that we did that. So I attended that, and it was good to see. We've had several, if you were coaching the Science Olympiad on Mondays this year, you really got burned because they've had several Mondays off. Yeah. And so, also, I just wanted to point out that there's a STEM day for girls in grades 7-12 at CLC this coming weekend. And I want to point this out. I don't want to embarrass this good man over here. But he actually sent me an email about this, and that rarely has happened to me in my career, where somebody in a non-curricular department took the initiative to say, did you know this was happening? I did know it was happening, but it also built a little fire under me to say, push this a little harder, Tom. But John emailed me and said, I saw this, maybe you might be interested in that. And that's a really good sign when you've got, in any organization, even when someone says, well, this isn't my bailiwick, but directly, but I'm interested in it and I'll help somebody else out. So thanks, John. Anyway, STEM Day, girls, grades 7-12, CLC, and there's a phone number to call ahead of time. And you get all kinds of information about careers, and there's sessions for parents too.
Excellent, thank you. Anyone else? Jason?
Well, I attended a kindergarten meet and greet last night at Woodview School. I think it was put on by the PTO. My littlest guy is going to be going to kindergarten next year, and I just think it's a really good opportunity, especially for first-timers. Oh, this will be our third kid going through, but and the 4-year-old seen the inside of Woodview School a bazillion times, so he was nonplussed, I'll tell you. But for those parents who were there for the first time, you could see that the kids were excited to be there and to see what their kindergarten classroom was going to look like. I just think it was put on really well and for a good purpose.
Good, thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Ellen, Superintendent report.
Sure, I'm going to refer this to Amanda, who's going to talk a little bit about how our testing with our Chromebooks went.
So we recently had our winter math testing window. It was wonderful to have the Chromebooks for grades 3 through 8. I can't speak to results yet, as we just okay, but as far as logistics of testing with the Chromebooks, it went perfectly. We were able to test in the student's regular environment, which is always the best way to assess students. It's where they're most comfortable. We were able to do it quickly and efficiently, and it really just provided much more instructional time. There was much less loss of instruction because we were able to use the Chromebooks for testing this route. So it was truly a wonderful round of testing for us.
Well, that's good to hear.
And just this weather, if it would stop.
Yeah.
You're going to see a lot of overtime because our guys have been coming in early trying to keep things salted, the parking lots salted. Even with that, we've had a couple of falls despite our slip, trip, and fall training in the Institute days. But they're working great. It's just a lot of overtime. So.
Cost of doing business.
Yeah.
Thank you. Committee reports, evaluation, assessment, curriculum.
Our next meeting is March 14th. The Diversity Committee is scheduled for March 13th, but we may need to change that because that's the same night as our IASB dinner. So Paul and I will be both there. We had a diversity meeting last week. Very well.
How many are going to the meeting March 13th?
I am not able to.
Good.
It might work.
Okay. If I could have a motion to approve the consent agenda,
So move.
Second.
including the addendum personnel report, sorry. Any questions? Okay.
Braden.
Aye.
LaCroix.
Aye.
Strack.
Aye.
Meskel.
Aye.
Mack.
Aye.
Weedman.
Aye.
Motion carries. Straight to new business. We have nothing else going on here. Discussion of the Hargar expansion.
I'm going to let John handle that one.
Thank you.
Sounds so excited about that.
So, as you've seen in your board memo, just to give a brief history, Hargar Electric is a company within district bounds that is considering expanding their business, and as part of their expansion, they've are hoping and reaching out to the village and various districts in the area to discuss what kind of financial incentives we can give them to stay here as opposed to transferring to Wisconsin. So in a course of several meetings from their original request to today, I would say, they've gone from asking for a complete abatement of everything for 7 years to some districts in the area are accepting of the idea of a 50% abatement on the new portion of their property. So that is what we have brought to the board as a discussion item. I want to be very clear, there's no recommendation, I think, from the administration. I think this is something just for discussion.
Well, I had let you and Ellen and Jim know my thoughts on this earlier, but I'm not inclined to abate anything for a profitable company. You know, as far as I'm concerned, they can use their profit and build their expansion on their own and then deal with the taxes as they come and be a good corporate citizen that way, rather than trying to hold the town hostage. So, my opinion, but I would be inclined to not even consider it. I don't know what other districts are doing, and if us not participating in this were their deciding factor, then that's like a drop in the bucket for what they're looking for. But yeah, I don't know. Is the village intending to give them an abatement?
I believe the village has not only agreed to, I want to be careful, I don't know necessarily if this is rock solid yet, but I believe the village's offer is not just an abatement, but an additional financial incentive in addition to the abatement. I would say that it was, I don't know if it has been formally approved, but I know District 127, in light of past precedents referenced in the memo, that's how we got to the 50% reduction on the new property portion only. So,
I mean, to me, it has to stop somewhere. you know, like the FedEx abatement was, to me, something that shouldn't have been done. That's a multi-billion-dollar company who can afford to build a plant wherever they want to, or whatever it is, a distribution facility. So this is where I stand, but I would prefer not to do that. So if anyone else has any input or comment.
I think this is the second time this topic's come up for me today, because I was at my own fire district board meeting. So the high school, if I remember right, the high school kind of brought up the 50% on the expansion. So while we wouldn't capture the entire tax from that expansion, we would still see an increase for a building that, for the school district, doesn't produce any children to educate. So I agree that there's got to be some point where you got to put a foot down, because it's hard to, because in theory, the rest of the school district and the rest of the homeowners and the rest of the businesses are now financing their expansion, which is hard to swallow. But a company that size moving out of the district, if I ever did my math right, they put about $32,000 yearly into our tax coffers from their tax bill, for just D46, if I did my math right. That's a lot of money to lose if they were to up and leave, which would then put which would put a greater burden on the taxpayers as well. Whereas we would still see, if we gave the 50% on just the expansion portion, we would still see an increase in the tax dollars coming in. Granted, it's only temporary for 4 or 5 years. You know, I see it both ways. I understand where you're coming from, and I feel the same way a lot of times, where, you know, the corporations are taking advantage of the homeowners and expanding on their dime. But we are still capturing something for at least 5 years, and then it would go to the full amount after that. So I know that's been a discussion on it. That was a discussion at the fire district board this morning as well. So they didn't table it. They tentatively approved based on what the final contract looks like.
I understand what you're saying. I mean, put it this way, if I were to entertain it, I would want access to their financials. I would want to see all the information they used to come up with the numbers they came up with in their proposal. I know they're a private company, but if they're asking us to abate $100,000 or more, then I think it's reasonable to ask them for that information. And if they're not willing to provide it, then maybe it's not that important to them.
I would say that, and I believe this was included in some of the board packet materials, the village put together a portion of the presentation where they went over some of the financials. I don't know if, in particular, if the village had that level of access, but I do know the village did a lot of work in terms of going so far as, like, the Harger's threatening to move to Wisconsin, so the village reached out to Wisconsin and got a very good idea of what kind of incentive a company like them would. So I would say they've done a lot of the homework on it, and not to the depth that you would.
No, and that homework is primarily based on a lot of assumptions and speculation as to what it would be. I mean, if we look at their financials and they're sitting on a gigantic pile of cash, then why aren't they using their own money to do this and not asking the community to pay for it? So I mean, if they were to allow us to see that information, I'd be willing to entertain it. I don't
know if you're going to get to that.
Well, yeah, and I don't know if we will, but it doesn't hurt to ask. But if they're going to ask for the money, then it's not just what their demands are; it's what we need to see too.
And I just want to be clear about one thing, and I'm glad Mr. Weedman brought this up. It's what I believe the fire district and District 127 are proposing isn't that the district would be contributing any money towards it.
Right,
it would be more of a lost opportunity for 5 years on revenue.
Yeah.
So I just want to be clear, this isn't something where the district is financially incentivizing in the sense of this is a check we're cutting.
We're just losing tax dollars.
We're losing tax dollars, which are then, as Jim mentioned, become the burden of the rest of the taxpayers in the district. So,
John, Do you have a sense of what happened with FedEx after their abatement ended? Do they now pay an amount of property tax? Did they
Yes.
renegotiate that, or are they now paying
They
the
paid
full
the full amount after the expansion was, after
Okay.
their period was done.
I mean, the one thing that struck me is, what happens after 5 years? Do they say, well, guess what? Now we're gonna move to Wisconsin? So, just something to,
Yeah, the FedEx agreement was very similar to what is being proposed by 127, is the 50% on the expansion only. And that was a 5-year period after if I remember right, after the construction was completed, then it was a 5-year or break, I guess.
we had some folks who came to the tax levy hearing who were pretty upset. And I think we owe it to them to make sure that we consider all aspects of this, because that's who we ultimately have to answer to next year in December when they stand up and say, why do you need all this money? It's going to be, partly because of this decision. So I'm not advocating either way. This is, to me, when I'm thinking about how to make this decision, I've got to keep those folks in the chairs at the top of my mind.
I do know that this was an open meeting, so I shouldn't be violating anything. I do know that the fire district had asked the township assessor if there was a way to make sure that the assessed value of the district went up the full amount of the building, and then each district would then abate back just the portion to the medicine owner. They were told that no, that can't happen, because otherwise you lose that EAV going forward. We were told that they were told, I shouldn't say we sit on the board, but they were told that wasn't legal to do it that way, because if you're going to do an abatement as far as something like that, then you had to do it for the whole district. You couldn't do it just for one parcel. So they looked at another aspect to try and capture some of that as well. But
Is it possible we could have a scenario in the next year or two after this happened where, if not for this abatement, we would have been able to abate taxes for all the residents of the district? Or would impact or reduce an abatement opportunity for the district if we were in a position to do that?
I don't believe so, no.
So have they put a time frame on this, or?
I was about to bring that up as well. They have requested a March 1st, so I would appreciate if I had a general direction of the leaning of the board.
Well, we don't have a meeting between now and then to vote on anything anyway, so. And,
so obviously, the March 1st wouldn't, so. But I just want to say, that was what they've asked for, is a March 1st idea of what we would be doing.
I have a couple of thoughts to add some more ideas to the ring, but when I think about some things like this, I think about, when deciding whether or not to do it for this situation, could we do it for others who asked? Would we do it for others who asked? Every small business that says they're going to relocate it, I know they're in a situation where they're actually expanding, and that's why they're taking this opportunity to ask for this, but other companies could say, hey, we'd like some tax relief or we're going to move. And I think we have to draw a line in the sand, because, what we don't think about a lot in these situations is this company benefits from the infrastructure that's around them that's paid for by taxes. It benefits from the workforce that was educated by this district. I'm inclined not to give an abatement for this private company for the reasons Stephen said, for the idea that Christy mentioned. We sit here every year and defend ourselves on the levy, and then we want to get, it rings to me like the sports owners who get stadium funded by the taxpayers, and then the first opportunity they have a sweeter deal, they move to San Diego or Los Angeles, or it doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't seem fair to me.
I think for me, I think the next step should be asking them for more, or information I think we need to see. I mean, the financial information and how they arrived at the numbers and the proposal they have in detail. I don't want just, well, we looked at this and this and this and thought this or assumed that or whatever. You know, I'd like to see their balance sheet, and I'd like to see that sort of information so you can get an understanding of what position they're in and how they defend asking us to abate their taxes. Rather, if the only defense is that, well, we're going to move if you don't, that's not a very good defense.
But how do we justify them potentially up and leaving and losing a $32,000 tax bill?
Well, how do
right
we
now,
know they're
right
even
now,
serious about leaving?
right, well, you don't, but right now you don't know that they're already 1 foot out the door.
But
Now
we
you-
can't
now you
control
put-
that. We
No,
shouldn't.
no, I get that, and.
And we can't
it's
do that
hard-
for every
it's hard
company
to
that
do-
asks
It's
for
hard to
a
do what you're saying. I struggle with it too, don't get me wrong. It's not, I'm not up here one way or the other. I guess when I'm looking at the dollars and cents part is, we have a chance for it to go up slightly for 5 years, and then capture it the rest of the way out. We have the chance of losing everything that we get by having an abandoned building in town, which then you get little or zero from. So I'd rather go up a little bit for a short period of time and then capture everything after that than go backwards, because that's even a bigger burden to the rest of the taxpayers. Again, how do we justify our actions when we sit there in November again and we have everybody in the audience screaming at us about their tax bill? Again, I'd rather it go up a little bit than go down 30-some odd $1,000. That's almost a teacher.
Well, to me, it's the idea of the precedent too.
I get it. What's to stop somebody come in and say, I have a 2,000 square foot house, I want to put a 5,000 or a 1,550 square foot addition on it, I want an abatement on it. Right, where does it stop? I get it. I mean, it's no different than a TIF district and Walmart and the corporate people that go out there and get a 23-year TIF district and then move the mile down the road to Montego Road. It's no different. You know, the difference here, this is really short-term and not a very long-term deal to potentially not go backwards. You know, we all live in town, the negative effect of losing tax dollars or losing a taxpayer, basically, because the tax dollar, the tax levy still goes up. It still is there, the same amount of money is there. It's now that $32,000 then gets spread around everybody in the district versus it going up a little bit, forcing everybody else to pick up that tab on how the way the tax bill works.
Well, would you agree that we should at least ask them for more information?
I'm okay with asking for
their,
more
defend
information.
their request. I mean, whether or not they probably won't give us information, but I think
doubt you'd see their books, but
that's probably true. But I think we have to ask them. I mean, if they're asking us for money,
I think we have to ask a reasonable where they got the data from. Asking for the books, I think, is a little bit overreach, but
well,
again,
we can see
that's
what they
my
give
opinion.
us. I mean, we can ask for the moon and see what they provide to us.
But if they want an answer by March 1st,
It's gonna be tight.
asking for that is saying the same thing as saying no. And the reason, why weren't we speaking about this 3 months ago or that sort
We
of thing?
didn't know that 3 months ago.
Okay,
Right.
but did they know it, or what?
Probably. I mean, who knows? But, you know, and that's, I mean, 10 days is not enough time to, less than 10 days is not enough time to give them.
I'm sure we understand that asking for more information is the same thing as a no.
Yeah.
And I don't
Not
like
necessarily,
the
because I don't
idea.
think they've gotten an answer back from the other districts as far as of what the counter offer is. I don't know if they've gotten that back.
I mean,
The village may have gotten a wind of it, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
let's ask them for the information
Would it
and
be,
see what they provide.
would it be worthwhile to talk to the village and just say, what do you think about this? And
I
then-
know what they think.
I could answer that for you completely. I want to be clear about this. It's not been Harger who's been directly dealing with this. It's been the village who's been brokering on behalf of Harger. So they are a strong proponent of some form of tax consideration for the company.
Then they could raise their tax consideration dollars.
Then we can read each year that the village
I mean,
made profits last year or something like that. It'll be in the bulletin.
but I think it's worth asking them, for whatever the extra information they give us, I think it's worth asking them for that, so we can try to get a better understanding of their position and how they're defending this request.
We won't have a decision before March.
No, I don't see how we can.
I don't think they were getting an answer, I don't think they were getting an answer from everybody.
I can't imagine they would be.
See what we can
So,
get.
I mean, it's, put it this way, it's not, I mean, you've heard what we've said. I would say it's not a definite no, but it sure isn't a definite yes. So, you know, if
Yeah, the request for
they're
more
gonna have to do
information.
some work to get that.
Yeah, the request for more information is not a stalling tactic. It's, we really do want more information. But we can't give an answer by March 1st.
So the more information we're asking for, or we're trying to see if they're hurting enough to need this?
Well, no, I want to see what, I'd like to know what their position is. So if they're, you know, sitting on $100 million or some ridiculous number, I mean, if they're really, really profitable, I don't see a need for abating their taxes. I mean, they can obviously afford it. So I would just like a better financial picture of where they are, so we can take that into consideration in the decision.
Okay.
And on top of that, and I'd like to know how they arrived at the request that they were proposing and what went into that, so we have a better understanding of that too. You know, I mean, we're not going to get their full financials, but we should get something. And any further information is going to be helpful. So.
I'm happy to reach out to try to get more information for you guys.
Okay. All righty. Any other questions about that one? Okay. 1920 school calendar.
So in your packet was the proposed calendar for 1920. We met with the union to review this. Thank you, Sue, for the work you put into it. Of course, we'd have to ask for the waiving of the legal holidays for Veterans Day, President Lincoln's birthday, and it would not be on the 12th. It's on, the celebration is what, Sue? February 17th instead of the 12th. And Casimir Pulaski's birthday, March 2nd, we would ask for a waiver and hold school instead.
And we've done, I mean, we do this
Every year, same
right?
thing, yep. The good news is we have added for the contract, as I stated in my weekly update, an extra institute day, which is exciting for us. We now have another day to do some training and professional development. So that will occur at the beginning of the year. So the students would not start on Wednesday, they would start on Thursday.
And with this calendar, how, I know in the past we've tried to line up with high school, we're still on kind of the same pace as the high schools. So.
Yep.
That's good too.
Yeah, they had made it, they were on a different spring break than we were, but made that change to align with ours and the ROE and the rest of the districts around us. So yes,
We're 2 years into the switch to move parent-teacher conferences later. How's that going?
They they love it. Now,
Okay.
in the beginning, they were sure it wasn't going to work, and now we have not heard anything negative at all. And there was a concern that there would be less parent participation. That didn't pan out either.
You know, if there's ever an argument about why aren't we observing these days, the holidays, et cetera, I think the kids get much more out of
Being in
the
school.
teachers having the directed lessons on any of those topics, rather than just having the day off to go skiing or watch the tube all day.
I agree.
Thank you. Discussion of student lunch balances.
I just like bringing you guys good news. So I just wanted to make you guys aware of a growing issue in the district. My understanding is from previous years, we've normally had lunch balances that have accrued and have rolled over from previous years, but it's usually been in the couple thousand range in terms of total dollars. And so far, we're at $28,000 in outstanding lunch balances. To kind of help understand how that whole process currently works, we are, as students accrue a balance of larger than $10, we send out notices on the 15th of the month every month to parents to let them know how they can go onto the portal to make payments and that they have an outstanding balance. If the balance gets larger than $100, I feel like there's tiers of this. They get a phone call from our registrar making them aware of the issue and asking for payment and also giving verbal directions about how to make a payment online. So part of this is it's kind of, we've gotten hit with a double whammy of some of this is the change from a previous system that was more paper-based to a digital system. And with a paper-based system, you had a punch ticket that had to go up. And if you didn't have the punch ticket, obviously it was, I would say there was a disincentive to try to go up and get a lunch if you didn't have a punch ticket, a prepaid punch ticket too. But now with the current system, you type in a PIN code on a machine. From a student's perspective, they don't get to see what their balance is. So they just, it's like an unlimited credit card. Sure, I'll grab a second bag of chips. So that's causing balances to accrue to pretty large and unseen, and at least in our registrar's experience, unseen levels. So there's that, where there was the change in the system, and I think some of the issues with that. The other issue that changed was public acts have passed, Public Act 100-1092. I have this memorized because I have almost a full binder now of emails back and forth with our legal advisors on what can we do? How can we best handle this? Public Act 100-1092 is pretty stringent on how we can try to collect money from students, and specifically the biggest clause in there is we can't stigmatize the student in any way, and understandably. So you can't make them wear a wristband. It literally spells this out. You can't wear a wristband, you can't stamp their hand, you can't mention their lunch balance in public unless they've asked for it. You can't post a list of these are the delinquent students in our district. You can't keep them from extracurricular activities. There's a broad list of things that we can't do. The only things that it does say about what we can do is if it gets to over $500, we can go to the state with hat in hand and ask them to please reimburse us for this large outstanding balance. And if the state feels gracious, they'll eventually someday maybe cut us a check for that amount, or some portion thereof. So I just wanted to bring this to your attention of this is something that we're trying to work through. I know we're not the only district. I've heard there's a lot of other districts that are really wrestling through how do we appropriately handle this. And I think this will be, I think, a discussion in future board meetings as well of, is collections something that, I think you can go either way on that, on whether or not we would even refer some of these to collections. Something like $10 obviously it's $10, but some of these balances are into the several $100 range. And when you look at families, into the several thousand.
Then this led to John thinking, oh, if there's problems in the lunch fees, are there problems with registration fees? Are we delinquent in those? So we will give you information as soon as you've looked into that. But I would assume that we will have issues there as well.
I'm sure we will, and there probably always have been. I mean, that's
right.
Not going to be a big surprise.
But the amount might be.
John, I don't think I'm one of the people with the delinquent balance anymore.
Good. I was going to talk to you after the meeting. But
I did want to give you a little perspective. I know that there was at least 2 times when I had believed in my head that I'd gone into the portal and set up a recurring replenishment schedule, only to find that the next month I got a note. It was nice. It wasn't a nasty gram. It was a pleasant gram. But I was surprised to see it because I thought, I know I went into the portal and set up now I'm not the most technologically savvy person on the planet, but nor am I the least. So I'm somewhere in the middle, probably a good,
I'll give you 6.
medium-type person.
Step above
So
what I-
consider that possibility, that there might be some opportunities to make the portal a little easier to use, or
It's worth looking at, for sure.
it's worth looking at.
Yeah.
We had a discussion, by we, I mean the registrar and I, of even going so far as it's a more data-intensive thing for us to manage, but maybe this becomes, unfortunately, yet another form that gets filled out during registration of like, is this something, do you agree to automatic? Obviously, they don't have to sign it, but we can't force people to automatically make payments. So that was a discussion that came up. My favorite part of our meeting was the discussion of the parent who was livid that we were letting their student have meals because they were sending their student with a brown bag lunch every day. So she was upset about the fact that we weren't denying meals to a student. So that's a future thing as well, that we're gonna have to make a form for a parent to sign to say, please don't allow my student to have food.
I recall having that conversation with my mom. Right around 5th grade, I was running in there.
One other thing I wanted to mention as well, and this is one area that has become, I could go either way on it personally, but the discussion of second meals. Some students have, after getting their first meal, decided that a second meal is, they're hungry. So again, part of the stigmatizing thing is we can't tell students who have an outstanding lunch balance that they can't have a second meal, but we could, as a possible option, say no one is allowed to have a second meal purchased. That's another option that's available to us, again, because that's something that we're doing across the board. I could make on a personal level, I could make an argument both ways of, on the one hand, yes, that might save us on some of the bill, but I also...
How frequently does that happen?
We've, just in the month of January, we had 420-ish second meals.
Really?
265 of those were on delinquent accounts.
Well, I mean, you have to consider the possibility that some of these kids may not be getting anything to eat at home.
Right. Which is why, like I said, I could kind of go, I just want to mention it because I want to give you everything that is available to you as a board, but I can go either way on it.
Well, when I first read this, my dad used to tell me there wasn't any free lunch, but I'm thinking there is a free lunch in some places. The other one that struck me was the $28,000. That's about half a teacher in Benny's, even at that point, we're not at the end of the school year yet. But how often do you have your job alike meetings with your contemporaries in the area?
So there's a Northeast Illinois Association of School Business Officials that we get together about once a month.
Okay, I'd be interested in knowing what's happening with them. What do they do?
Yeah, that's,
Be the territory, and that's kind of important to know. I don't like the idea of letting them just go, because I really think if they're going for a second meal, they're flagging their nose at us when they're doing that. I mean, they're just saying they aren't going to do anything.
Unless they're hungry.
The other thing about eating in Grays Lake is that we're building multiple eating establishments in downtown Grays Lake. And if you want to get a pizza on a Friday night and want to park, good luck if you're not there by 5 o'clock. So people do eat, and they do have money to eat. At least some people do.
Any other questions on that? Staffing, 1920 school year.
Well, this has been the smoothest staffing that we've ever, are you agreeing with me?
I hope you just didn't jinx it.
It is only February.
I shouldn't have said it, huh?
Too early.
She's retiring. Well.
What could possibly go wrong?
Jinx. Anyway, Lynn, it's all going to be your fault if this doesn't work. So at this point, we don't expect that we will have to rip anybody, given there's only 2 less positions due to class size, but we have retirements and people that are leaving the district. So that will be a good thing, because I know that this is the time of the year when teachers get very nervous, especially our newest teachers. And then we will be hiring, as per approval already by the board, through their evidence-based funding, the behavior specialist, English language coach, 2 more instructional coaches, and 1 bilingual interventionist. Those were actually approved for this year, but due to the fact of the timing of when we were approved that, we felt that we should wait to get that going for next year rather than this year. So that's on this year's evidence-based funding, not next year. So we haven't really made any decisions about next year because we wanted to see if indeed we were really going to get that money before. Although our governor today, you will see it in your weekly update, indicated that he was going to put more money in evidence.
It was 175 million, I think?
Yeah. So, but we just didn't feel comfortable
No,
looking
yeah,
at anything
well.
until we.
When do employees need to be notified by?
March.
If they're being ripped, I can look up the specific date, but you'll be acting on non-renewals.
March meeting, right?
March.
Late March, early.
Early, yeah.
Yeah, late March.
I think
I have it in my calendar.
So roughly by mid-March, if I'm a teacher who, and I haven't been told anything yet, I'm pretty well assured I have a job next year. Okay. It's always good to know.
Topics for future agenda items. We had received an email this week from the Historical Society about the
Yes, and Dr. Goodman
GMS
and I
being
talked about that today.
50 years old. And
So I'm going to reach out and
chat about that.
we'll be talking about
Harger.
Harger. I don't know why I can't say that.
And just continuing discussion on the student lunch balance and registration fees, I think.
Have summer school offerings been already set up or not?
Not yet.
Okay.
You just approved the two summer school coordinators.
Yeah, okay.
So they're just in the process of that right now.
I have a suggestion for the next time that we have a report about the solar panels. Why don't we get together and just say, here are some specific questions that we have.
Okay.
And give it to them ahead of time so
That
they
would
can
be great.
prepare to
Yep.
be ready to go.
Okay.
Can we have sometime maybe end of March, roughly, just a brief overview of the current budget and where we're at as far as percentage of spending wise? You know, where we anticipate to be at the end of the year? You know, are we on target, off target? Are we completely screwing up the budget? Something along those lines, just to kind of, it doesn't have to be an in-depth thing, just something, kind of a brief overview of what we have, where we're at.
I'd be happy to. And this wouldn't necessarily be at the next meeting, but I know you specifically have had questions about contracts as well. So we're currently working through that in the business office to see where we're at with our various contracts. And I don't know if I'll have that ready for the March 6th, but the goal would be March 20th.
Okay. I think we need a brief closed session. So if I can have a motion to enter into closed session pursuant to the sections of the Open Meetings Act listed in the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
LaCroix,
Aye.
Meskel,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Strack,
Aye.
Weedman, Braden.
Aye.